Hey kids, welcome to Stylus Rumble Effects Time continuation thing. Having an ice cap. Brain freeze. So let's make ourselves useful and start building the next part of this thing here. So I'm just going to separate this stuff so I can hide it easily. So here we have the scene that we're trying to recreate on a budget, and the part we have done so far is just the wall of water. All right, so I spent a little bit of time off screen just making sure that none of my ripples or waves were coming back on themselves or not leaving the frame on time, sticking around when they shouldn't. And this is the result of just 2 of those little cycles just getting rolled through over and over again using the deformers. It's not the best, but it's cheap. It's going to be good enough for something we don't have a lot of time to do. So the next thing I'm going to do is get this next big overlapping shape here, the blue gradient. I'm going to get that working because it's a simple piece that we'll be able to start building on our fanciness on top of that. Took a little second to think about it. And what I'm going to do is a very similar thing to what I just did. You could reuse your green screen if the movement is going to work easily for this, but I'm just going to make a new one because I mean, making a squiggly rectangle, it's not, you know, that's, I think we got time to do that again. And it might not actually save any time to reuse the other one since it has an animation and stuff on it. So let's just do this. Make sure it starts here. Make sure it's moving the correct way, so we want it to move that way. We're going to add our envelope deformer, just like we did before. Boop. Alright, that looks okay to me. We're going to have to change your shape a little bit to get it working. And just like before, we're going to roll along here, match up the shapes on our storyboard, or in this case, in our scene that we already have animated. Because we're just a bunch of thieves. And I've got on stop motion again because I've been doing animations today. So it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And again, just like it last time, we're just going to smooth out all of these curves so we don't have anything too abrupt. That way everything has a little bit more flow, a little bit smoother. But not in a try-hard kind of way. Which... we'll call it good enough. So you're saying to yourself, but Tracy, this has a big cutout hole in it. How are we going to get that work? So this part here is a fairly simple shape. So I'm actually going to create another shape here, which may seem counterintuitive, but I think this is going to be simpler than trying to animate the whole crazy other thing. So like this probably seems like a little bit silly because I have the thing there and I can just copy it frame by frame. But the idea of this is not just to do a copy for the sake of doing it, but to come up with a solution that we could use in the future to do something more elaborate. So I could use this here, this cutter, and cut my cutter with another cutter, like cut my green screen with another green screen, because if we were creating something, we'd be able to manipulate it a little bit easier rather than coming up with this beautiful shape in the background. Because this one is going to be, the whole shape itself is fairly simple. Oh, it goes down like that. And then it's just going to melt away like this. Now our big blue shape here is being cut by our whole shape. Because you saw how easy it was to animate that whole, this thing. It's got one keyframe at the beginning, in the middle here, as this fold here flops, and then it just slinks away. Always name things as you're going, or else you're just going to cry sad, sad tears when you don't know what any of these things do. Trust me. Okay, next thing, the cutter, our final cutter, this thing here, we're going to need a gradient for that. And in this case, it's a dark blue gradient all the way along. I don't even think, there's not even a huge gradient to it. My son and my husband are in the basement playing, so if you hear screaming, it's because my husband's got no patience. Alright, so here's our gradient. Now we're going to take this whole setup we just created and use a cutter again, and we're going to invert it because we want only to see up here this fancy thing. And this seam doesn't need to be super perfect because of course we're going to be hiding it behind, but if we need to make a few adjustments, it's pretty easy to do. Because these deformers, man, before this came along we used to have to do a lot more work, let me tell you what. All right, so since you can see our thing doesn't line up exactly with the original, we're gonna have to make some adjustments. Make sure that each part of our wave is going up higher than the part that's already there. So see, our wave is a little bit higher than the original, so we have to make sure that the folding part of the wave is covering that. I'm going to turn off my stop motion keyframes because I don't like having to do this over and over again. Make sure our hole is cutting this corner. So we're just going to go along and make sure that this part here is folding over nicely. And as it starts to come down, we don't want it to get too high, and we don't want any crazy artifacts up here. As I said before, hopefully you've got a good storyboarder who showed you where your wave is going to fold over. But if not in your sketches, then you just indicate that the wave is starting to fold over. And you'll be able to set up your keyframes just like I did by stealing the movement of the show, because your storyboard here will have something like this. As your wave starts to fold over, you'll have something like this, and maybe you'll have your nice drawings here. So your board, if you have something like this, you can see where your hole is that you're cutting out is this part here, and then the foldy over wave part is this part here. So two different cutters, and this blue part you can fill in this whole shape like that, and then once you put in the green cutter, it's going to give you the hole underneath, and your gradient's already in there. So you've got your darker part under here and your lighter part here, but you can adjust your gradients if you need to as you go along. Get rid of that. So here, as this is starting to fold over, maybe I want to adjust my gradient because that's animatable, as we remember. So I can make sure that it's getting darker as the wave is folding over itself, because you're going to get a shadow. You could even put a drop shadow maybe here underneath. That's something we'd have to play with later. That's something I'd put in last. This part here I'm having a little bit issue with because mine is not the same height, so we want to make sure there can be a little bit of a gap up here, because that's the issue that I'm just trying to tidy up here. You can see this small gap between my folded over piece and my underwave, but because I can throw in lots of foam and stuff to hide that seam, I don't need it to be really ultra precise. But if there's a big hole there, I'm going to have trouble hiding it, so we don't want it to be too crazy. Another case of spend as much time as you need. This has taken me about 25 minutes, which is way longer than I wanted to spend on. But that's okay, it takes what it takes. We'll move this guy over here, and we'll take a look at the next step. So these splashes in the back. I'd love to do 1,000,000 frames of this stuff. I think it's going to look really cool, but we don't have time. So what we're going to do is going to figure out what the essence of them is. So if we can take this unit here, so it starts smaller, gets bigger. This one's especially nice. It's got like a cool shape here and a bunch of breakup. All right. So what we're going to do is create some small new units. So the same way that we created these guys, we've created something that we could reuse over and over again. We're going to create a little foam unit that we can reuse over and over again. So new color, and again I'm going to work in purple because I can see purple really well on this color. It's going to be easier to be able to work things out. So here they're starting in the back and coming over the falling over the front here. So there's never any time where you just have a small splash that grows into a big splash. So I think we might have to go with cycles here. I think that would be the best bet. And we'll do a circle. So what I'm going to do is sort of a splash generating circle. And I want this to look like it's really a lot of work, because this is really where this kind of stuff is a little bit less flashy than some of those big splashes. So I'm going to do a longer cycle. Let's try 27 frames. So I've just gone along and I've got a circle on 27 frames, and I'm going to, all right, so these are kind of going along in this direction. So that's what I'll do. Start with a little foamy shape, and these are quite small little detail-y shapes with then a lot of nothing. Like it's a lot, like a lot of edge detail, but not a lot of internal detail. We'll figure out the shadow after. We'll just do a flat, simple thing here. So I'm going to have a little just abstract shapes that are climbing the circle. You know, I shouldn't have done a line art. I should have just done pencil one. This is where all those bouncing balls come in handy, so you're going to go up and down. Whoop, just like a bouncing ball. It's throwing these splashes up into the air. And I'm just going to do a whole bunch. Just a whole bunch of splashy shapes getting thrown up into the air. And it's not going to look like this, because this has a lot of smaller shapes, not a lot of splashes. So maybe I'll do... I like the foam getting thrown up into the air. I think that looks really cool. I'm going to fill this whole area. So tool properties, I'm going to go all along my frames here. Select them all. And I'm just going to fill. So now my circle's a solid, because getting the flashing is bothering me. I'm going to copy and paste this all the way along and use this little like drip circle, this splash circle. You can see it's just got some random sort of watery type shapes rotating around clockwise. And we're going to use this. The end we're going to add some details, and we can do some overlay details as well to get some more interesting shapes just to break it up a little bit. But the main bulk of it is going to be built out of these little circles. So let's group this because we're going to make a lot of them. And we're going to start them here. Now you can use apply peg transformations for these, but then you won't be able to change the cycle itself. So it's a 27 frame cycle. So what I'm going to do is just take it, start this one on frame 7, make sure that you extend it to the end of the scene. And then we're going to take another one, and we can start that a little bit later in the cycle. So this is going to give us the illusion of having a number of different things working. So let's start this one on 16. Now there's 3 of them going, and we can, so when they're playing side by side, you can see that even though it's cycled, it does have a little bit of a difference in breakup. So, I mean, obviously it's the same thing over and over again, but it's not super identical. And we can a little longer, taller and fatter, one a little shorter. And again, it's adding a little bit of interest. That's what we got time for. That's what we're going to do. So copy this again. Let's actually break this into units of 3. That way it's a little easier to work. So I'll give it a peg and its own composite, and we will have copy and paste special, another unit of 3, paste special, another unit of 3. So breaking it up this way is going to make it a little bit more manageable dealing with all of these duplicates. But as I said, you can use an apply peg transformation if you want to try and save your scene from having a million of these guys in there. Will it make a big difference? I don't know. So let's see about scale. That's okay for scale there. And they're all popping out from behind until we get here. A little too fast. Okay. That seems good. Actually, I'm going to take this next guy, start over here. And if you want, you can switch the order of these so that you don't have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. You'll have 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1. That'll break it up another little bit. And you could even go, I mean, like I said, there's 27 frames in these cycles, so you could change this one as well so it starts on a different frame. I'm just too tired. So bring our third group along as this one clears. Drop it down. I don't remember what order the last one went in, but I mean, you can smoosh him down, change their shapes and size a little bit, just to give a little bit of interest, but it's fine. This is fine. Yep, so we're gonna need one more group in order to have enough in there to hide our cycles. So this guy's going to start over here. And I'm just going to cycle to the end, and then we'll have it end where it needs to end. So paste special, let's paste that 4 times. So it needs to go across about 6 times to clear the screen. Right, so all of them should now be cycling across the screen. Whoa! And we can easily add, boop, do 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 do. And now we are going to have to turn. Let's just use our flat because it takes up a little bit less than our entire situation here. So all of our animations should be on this top peg for the 3 of them, and then the lower ones we can use this for dealing with the y-axis. So here it's going up, we can scale it and then have it come down. We're gonna have to curve it out. If these were on 3D pegs, we wouldn't have to do this, but I just want to have an up and down motion for that guy. And we can have him crash a little harder. So let's have him go up a little faster and crash down a little more. So he goes up and crashes. Next. Not as high, because then it's a little bit different. And we'll have him come down, but not as fast. So then we do this for a while. This is funny. This is why in some of my videos I'm like, well, I'd like to do some effects, but they take forever, because I mean they do. Even stuff like this where you're using every shortcut in the book, you gotta spend some time. There's no way around it. And this is going to take much less time than the beautiful work that the animators did on the movie. But it's still no small feat of effort, because we have hundreds of frames here, and this is something that I can't loop, this height thing, because you can see the change in the water's height is going to determine how high we can go with our thing here. We have to make sure that it stays below the water line. So we hide the fact that this is just a circle with some drawings on it. Okay, that part is done. It took several years. So let's take it and make it the appropriate color. Hide it behind our mess of stuff. And we haven't gotten to this foldy over part yet, but now we've got this background splashing. All right, so here we've got what we've done so far. Splashes are just zooming along. And the end part, obviously we've got to get it to fold over to the top of the thing. I'm going to throw in a few more, because right now it feels very just like it's zooming across. So we're going to throw in a few little detail-y bits. So as it comes across, here where it's low, we can take one of them, find its keyframes here, start it lower, and we can make a real big one. Add a few in, just to give it a little bit less sameness. So I'm going to save out this half before Camtasia crashes. I'm not sure I'm going to edit this together. It's a lot of silence. We'll figure it out. So next we're going to fold this stuff over the top of here. Let's take a look at our reference. So it starts to come over the top here as just right over that fold line. So behind, in front. Now, I didn't come up with a good solution for the bottom of the dealie. We'll see how just the round circular bottom works, because it will be a series of rounds, because it is a whole whack of these doodle-daddles here. Because this is our maboober and other technical words. So here's where ours are going to come in front. We'll just take these. We have to put Z information on this to bring it forward. And so I'm trying to decide where to put it, because these have are going to have a lot of animation on there. So what you can do, we're going to use a coordinates and control points window. So this guy's going to go in front here. So let's make sure that the bottom of the dealie is pretty close here. And we're going to have it switch at that frame, because we have no fold, and then the next frame you can see our fold shows up. So this is what we want to hide. We're actually going to have to do this one as well, because this one's not going to cover this area here. So start with this guy. On the coordinates control points window, we're going to put information on the drawing and then turn it back to 0. So that's going to create a keyframe. So here, even though, beep, if I open up my options box and I go to animate using animation tools is off. So I cannot animate using this, and I cannot put information using my hotkeys on this drawing, but I can type into my coordinates control points window. And I'm going to do 0.001, and I think I want to have it a little higher. Boop. We can't actually just enter 0 here. We have to put an increment and then hit 0 to bring it back, because we want to put like a stop measure. So we want to say you're at 0 and then you're going above 0. So we need to have a frame before that says it's at 0, then go 0, 0, 1. Because if we're using if we decide to put it on 2s or something, if we put 0.0001, it may break. And we're getting too much pop here because of this big round bottom. So we're going to bring it up a little bit as it gets to the last keyframe. Let's just put a frame here, because this is only controlling the Y. This guy's going to have to be a little bit wider, I think, and then we'll bring it to the end here. So let's just make this guy real wide. Pop. And this guy not too far down to the end. All right, next guy along. Same thing. So 0.001. Frame before we put it at 0. Boop, and now it's popping over the top here. We have to bring it up so it's not too crazy as it folds over. And we can use cutters if we want to, because we didn't do anything with the bottom of these circles here. If it's not really working the way we want to, we can add some cutters there. Or we can do an overlay where we actually just draw along the bottom. I think that's going to be a better solution than just adding another cutter to my insane amount of cutters I have already. I say insane like I'm not going to add more. Okay, 45 minutes later, we have the next step done. This is why I don't do a lot of effects stuff, because it's just do this for 6 hours. Alright, let's watch it and see if we have any huge errors. Maybe we should have Jammy surfing on this after. Surfing Jammy! Okay, there's a little bit of weirdness there that I'd like to tidy up. But overall, I think this is a pretty good, like, cheap version of, like, it's about as good as I was hoping it would be. Hopefully my fan is not too loud. So the only thing I really want to change is this guy here. We have it coming in just from the side, so let's just start it down lower. I feel like not only is it coming off from the side, that it's coming up from behind. So we're going to start a little lower. Have it come up like that. I think that'll be nicer. It's not a big change, but I think it's gonna be nice. Actually, I'll have them come out of frame as well. Down. So the first ones come up and come down. This guy I think should come down later. And this guy will almost come down. So here, I don't know how good your eyes are developed yet. You'll start seeing this stuff more as you practice, but the shapes here are significantly larger than the rest of it. This foam has got quite small shapes, but we've got some big ones coming in here. So anyone with a trained eye is going to see that the texture has changed, but most people won't see that. A lot of animators don't even see that. They don't look for stuff like that, but I find it very noticeable that the texture of these larger ones have changed. But it's something that I think is not going to be noticeable for most people, so it's not going to be worth a ton of effort to change. So here we're just going to make sure we don't have a hole in that frame. Little stuff like that. Like I've been mentioning, it's little stuff like this that's going to save you from looking ultra cheap. And this part here, this we're going to want a transition for. Bink bunk. Because it pops. It's huge. Like even a layman is going to see that. I just grab a little frame here, a little drawing node, and we're going to, this one's going to have to be above in the Z-axis because we want it to be in front of everything. And we'll give ourselves a little drawing here of what's ahead, and then we can give ourselves a few frames lead up where the stuff starts to come over the front before the foam does. So now we can get rid of this pink one. Delicately remove the straight here, because it goes from a very straight line to something with a lot of shape. So we want to just gently bring our eyes along for that ride. Just going from the perfect straight edge to something that's not perfect is giving me some... Let me get rid of this too, the edge, because I'm seeing a lot of this in my peripheral vision. Yeah, so that's much smoother. It's hiding some of the... Alright, so that's hiding it pretty well. Now, in terms of shadows for these things, I'm not sure if I could get away with a real cheap and dirty shadow or not. I think there are a couple ways that we could go about it. One is just straight apply peg transformation, but it's going to give us a very... and this area is going to be a problem. I think one way to do it is use more cutters. Empty. And if you look at the original, let's just pop over to a reference for a second so you can see my thinking with this. Aside from this part, like the simpler areas, see, we've just got kind of like this stuff happening. If we just ignore the edges here, some simple shapes like that, then we can just have them animate in like little shape, like highlight ghosts. I'm not going to do a cycle. You could do a cycle on every single piece of this. I think that would make sense. But as this comes along, then I could use this as a highlight. Oh, keyframe mode on. And I'm going to turn on 3D Path so I don't have to clean up all these arcs. I don't know why I didn't do that sooner. Rotate it and have it come along and just kind of hang out with that front guy. All right, so now we've got this done. I didn't think it was going to work with the Z-axis, but it seems to just do it. Seems happy to just deal with that. Well, that's a happy surprise. I didn't think that it was going to cooperate. See, like this guy. What are you doing in the front there? So we are seeing some OpenGL problems with the Z layering, but once we render it, the problem goes away. So we may want to continue animating with this unplug just so we don't have that problem visually, and make sure we plug it in after. Make a little post-it note, put it on your desk so you don't forget, because you will. You will forget. We're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, so let's just make sure that I'm not fooling myself. All right, we rendered. I didn't change the pink back to the blue, so that's still there. Well, so our highlights are super jacked up. But that's okay. I think if I added in a couple more, it's just so it didn't look so much like a giraffe's spots, just to fill in a little bit more of the hard parts, be a little bit more mindful of where I'm putting the highlights. I think it's going to be good enough for this low budget production. I think this part along the bottom here too, when it comes along again. Come along, wave. Man, this scene is long. Why did I do this? This part here, I would like to, it's a little bit too bump, 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 bump. And because it's going so fast, it just looks like bump, 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 bump. So I think I'd want to just put a little overlay here to get some unevenness the way I had here. How many frames is it? I don't think I want to hand draw that many frames. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard. I could just do another cutter and just have a squiggly line that kind of like runs along down the side here. Probably shouldn't have used a perfect circle for my cycle. So that's something I've learned. Because if the bottom had been a little bit more, even if it was just irregular, I wouldn't have this strobing circle issue that I have. So I'm gonna call that part 2 because I've been working. This is another 2 hours in. It's interesting having all the timestamps of how long this stuff actually takes me. This type of effect, like you're gonna have to give it a couple days. You can't. I can't think of a way to do it in less than 1 day. Because at this rate, once I get all the details, and especially since we're going to put in those splashes and stuff, and maybe we'll even put jammy surfing in here, I'm not sure. So we'll call that a day. This video, like if I took out the silent parts, it's probably like 4 minutes long. Ugh. Like, share, subscribe, all those things internet people ask you to do, and you too can watch me silently do tedious things forever.